Hey guys, Tom here again from SerumPresets.com, and in this tutorial for Serum we're going to be using Serum's FM functionality in the mode section of the oscillators, one of the warp modes, to create a really nice future house bass. I'll just quickly demonstrate what it sounds like. So a really nice sound, reminds me a lot of some of the recent stuff that's been coming out, like with producers like Tchami, Oliver Heldins, Gorgon City, Disclosure, that kind of stuff really. And the beauty of the sound is that it's only using sine waves, but we are using what's called frequency modulation. So I'm going to be explaining what FM actually is and how we can make the sound from scratch. But just before we initialize the patch here, I'll just quickly mention this is actually base 86, as you can see at the top here, of my future house bass preset pack for Serum. It contains 128 really cool future house bass sounds created by me. You can actually go ahead and check out an audio demo of some of those sounds over at SerumPresets.com, or you can click the link in the description below and that'll take you to the page as well with an audio demo and everything. So thanks in advance if you decide to purchase that. It really helps support me and the channel, and also you'll get yourself some really nice bass presets for Serum. But without further ado, let's go ahead and initialize the patch here and begin making the sound completely from scratch. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just dive into envelope 1 here, which by default in Serum is the Amplitude envelope. We're just going to kind of get our basic Amplitude envelope going. So something around here with a little bit of release. You want this really nice kind of pluck-like envelope. The other thing I'm going to do straight away that I like to do on a lot of bass sounds in order to give them a really nice attack, if you just take this to around 10 milliseconds or something like that, so we're just increasing the attack a little bit, but then what we're going to use is a very sharp envelope here, and we're going to switch on our noise oscillator. One noise I really like is this high pass chorus J106 noise source. I mean, there's loads of these that really work, especially a lot of these attack sounds, but I just really like this noise source. And what we're going to do is use this noise source for the attack of the sound. So if we just drag and drop our really sharp envelope here onto the amplitude level of the noise oscillator, that gives us a really nice attack. I'll demonstrate that a bit later. We're only putting a very low amplitude level on this because we are going to be using multiband compression later on in the sound, so that's really going to bring it out a lot more. But the next thing we're going to do, now we've got the general amplitude envelope of the bass sound sorted, we're just going to program our sub oscillator here to just be -1 octave. Make sure the sine wave is selected and that this is being routed directly out, so it's not going to be affected by any things like effects that we add later on in the sound, and this is going to stay really consistent, and just put the amplitude level up to full. So far if we switch off oscillator, all we've got is this. Which, as hopefully you can hear, is just the sub and the attack of the sound. So let's start creating the main part of the sound. So what we're going to do here is we're going to turn on oscillator A and B. So like I said at the beginning of the video, this is going to be using what's known as FM, or frequency modulation. Now Serum is actually classed as a wavetable synthesizer. It's not an FM synthesizer. An FM synth would be something like a piece of hardware like the DX7 or the digital counterpart, which is FM8, but by Native Instruments. I'm sure you've heard of it. And what an FM synth actually has is what's known as operators. So you typically have a lot more than just 2 oscillators, and using quite basic waveforms, you can make oscillators actually modulate each other. So For example, in Serum, we have envelopes and LFOs that we can use to modulate various parameters in Serum. But using FM, you can actually use one oscillator to modulate the pitch of another, which is exactly what we're going to do in this sound. So because we're going to be using oscillator B to modulate oscillator A, we actually don't need to have any amplitude from oscillator B at all. So the first thing I'm going to do straight away is just turn the amplitude level of that all the way down. Now, the really cool thing really about FM synthesis and using FM techniques is that we can create really complex waveforms and sounds using only basic waveforms. So if we go into the analog section of oscillator A, we're just going to use the analog B BD sine wave. What's really cool about these sine waveforms is that they're not perfect. As you can see here, you can kind of bend them a little bit, and we'll just have, it doesn't really matter exactly where it is. I mean, you can kind of use your ears to decide where you want the wavetable position to be, but we're just going to put it somewhere around there for now. And we're also going to use the same wavetable for oscillator B as well, just another sine wave. Now for both these oscillators, we are going to increase the unison to around 7. Unison is just the amount of voices that an oscillator is producing. These voices are then detuned, set by the amount you set with the detune parameter in order to make the sound thicker. The next thing we're going to do is bring the random knob all the way down on both these oscillators so that the waveform is being played from the same point every time, so we've got a nice consistent sound. And the next thing we're going to do, which is the most vital thing for the sound, is to we have a whole list of warp modes here, and we've actually used some in other tutorials such as the bend plus minus and the mirror and so forth. But what you need to do for this is actually click FM from B. So this is going to make sure that oscillator A is going to be frequency modulated by oscillator B. It's also worth noting you can also use amplitude modulation from B and also ring modulation from B, as well as using frequency modulation from the noise oscillators and sub oscillators as well. So for right now, we're just going to use this FM from B. Now what will happen now, as I increase this knob, we're going to hear more of the modulation taking place. So if I just pitch this down 1 octave, and I'm actually going to pitch oscillator B up another octave, I'll just bring the volume down a little bit, and I'll just slowly demonstrate to you what happens with the sound. So it has a really, really dramatic effect on the sound, and the really cool thing about this is you have so much control over the textural qualities of the sound using this parameter, and I'm sure you'll agree it's a really, really nice sound, but basically just from sine waves, which is really the power behind FM synthesis. The next thing we're going to do is we want to shape the sound a little bit further, so we're just going to implement just the Moog low pass 12 dB filter here. And what we're going to do, like most pluck bass sounds, is we're going to use the amplitude envelope, which is quite pluck in nature, to modulate the cutoff. And then once we've got this basic sound and shape, what we're going to do is just move around this FM knob to control the amount that oscillator B is actually modulating oscillator A until we find somewhere that sounds good. And the thing to note about this is that it's completely subjective. So where I place it might be different to where you want to place it if you want to go for a different type of sound. But just to demonstrate this, I'll just play the sound quickly. So I'm really happy with where that's around now. The next thing we're going to do is dive into the effects section. We're actually going to use the compressor within Serum to bring out some more of the harmonics that the frequency modulation is actually creating. So what we're going to do here is just simply select multiband and increase the gain, and what you'll notice is that this brings out, it really emphasizes a lot of the elements of the sound that have been created using the FM functionality. So that really brings out a lot of the high end of the sound and really kind of polishes it up nicely. The last thing that we're going to add is just some basic reverb. Again, like all bass sounds, you really don't want a lot of the low frequencies to be going through the reverb. Same if you ever use a delay, you really want to cut out the low frequencies. So what we can do here is just use this low cut parameter to cut a lot of the muddy low end out of the sound. And we're also going to bring down the mix amount here. We don't want too much reverb, and we'll just see how this sounds now. One thing you can really notice now that the multiband compressor is in effect as well is the noise that we added to the attack of the sound is really emphasized by the multiband compressor as well. So that's pretty much the sound. This really shows the power of FM within the oscillators within Serum. The downside of Serum is that you can't actually make the oscillators kind of have like a modulation loop where they're both modulating each other, which you can do in other more specialized FM synths like FM8 and so on. But that's not to say that you can't use FM in Serum in a really powerful way. We've just used two basic sine waves here, a noise oscillator and a basic sub oscillator, to create a really rich sound. So it's definitely something worth bearing in mind when you're creating patches in the future, to try and whenever you're making a patch, just try it out and see if it sounds good. It might not, but you might end up stumbling on a really great sound. And another thing to mention is that you don't have to just use sine waves either. FM's usually a lot better with more simpler waveforms. Otherwise the sound starts becoming a bit too kind of weird and it doesn't really make much sense. But definitely experiment with like triangle waves, square waves, saw waves and stuff like that, and you'll end up with some really interesting sounds. So that pretty much covers the tutorial, guys. If you find this helpful, please leave a like. I really do appreciate that. If you have any questions about this sound or any other tutorials, feel free to leave some comments down below. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a future house pack out for Serum which has 128 really high quality bass sounds in it. If you haven't checked it out already, head over to SerumPresets.com or click the link in the description below. So thanks a lot for watching the video, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.